space for the soul, where truth is not shouted, but whispered, where light is not blinding, but gentle, where faith is not loud, but deep. Here we walk with St. Peter not as a statue but as a man, not as a legend but as a brother, a man who failed but followed, who was broken but chosen, and whose quiet steps still echo in the lives of all who dare to live by truth. Today's reflection touches something precious and often overlooked. Goodness. Quiet, invisible, persistent goodness. Not the kind that gets applause, not the kind that trends online, but the kind that God sees in secret and smiles upon. In a world obsessed with being seen, celebrated, and praised, what does it mean to live a life of quiet virtue? Let's look again at Peter. Let's look again at the cross. Let's listen. Not for noise, but for truth. Part 2. The invisible path. How Peter witnessed without words. There's a kind of goodness that lives in silence. It doesn't post about itself. It doesn't wait to be thanked. It just is, like a candle burning in a quiet room. Peter knew that path, and he walked it not perfectly but faithfully. After the resurrection, Peter became a pillar in the early church, but not in the way the world defines greatness. He didn't become famous. He didn't build a name for himself. He built a people, a faith, a foundation. He served widows. He taught truth. He healed the sick, and then vanished from the scene. Much of his work was never recorded. Much of his goodness, unseen by history, was fully seen by heaven. This is the paradox of the gospel. The first shall be last. The greatest among you shall be the servant. Blessed are the meek, the pure, the peacemakers. Matthew 5. The world doesn't celebrate quiet goodness, but the kingdom does. And that's why we must speak this truth. You don't need to be famous to be faithful. You don't need to be noticed to be known by God. Peter reminds us, the weight of your witness is not in your words, but in the life you live when no one is watching. Part 3. Becoming a quiet witness, how to let goodness speak through you. Let's make this real. What does it mean to live this kind of goodness today? To be a quiet witness? It begins with understanding this. You were not made for applause. You were made for truth. The applause fades. The spotlight shifts. But truth endures. Here are 5 sacred practices to walk the path of quiet goodness. 1. Do good when it's inconvenient. Not when it's easy. Not when it pays. But when it costs you time, comfort, energy. That's when it counts. Peter stayed with hurting people. He walked with the broken, even when it wasn't glamorous, even when it meant danger. 2. Choose integrity over image. Live the same in secret as you do in public. Peter knew the pain of pretending. He denied Jesus to look strong, but he was only free when he chose truth, even when it hurt. 3. Speak less, love more. Sometimes your presence says more than your preaching. Peter learned this, especially after the resurrection. He didn't try to explain himself. He just loved, deeply, sincerely. 4. Celebrate others quietly. Let others shine. Help them rise. Peter empowered young leaders. He didn't compete, he equipped. This is kingdom greatness. 5. Trust that God sees what the world doesn't. This may be the hardest, but also the holiest. You may never be thanked. You may never be seen, but you are never unseen by heaven. Jesus said, "When you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." Matthew 6 verses 3-4. Let this sink in. The angels see your kindness. God remembers every hidden act of love. And eternity is built by the hands of those who serve in silence. Peter's life ended not with triumph, but with a cross. Tradition tells us he was crucified upside down, not because he was weak, but because he didn't feel worthy to die like his Lord. That's the mark of a man who let goodness shape him, who bore witness to truth, not with noise, but with love. Closing words shine, even unseen. Dear listener, your quiet goodness is not wasted. Your unseen love is not forgotten. Your hidden faithfulness is not small. It is holy. And in a world hungry for truth, your life, simple, gentle, faithful, can become a silent revolution. Like Peter, you may not always get it right, but grace will meet you again and again, and goodness, even when hidden, will always shine. Thank you for joining today's reflection on Built on Faith. If it stirred something within you, share it, not for numbers, but for souls. Until next time, may you walk quietly, live truthfully, and be a witness even when no one sees, because God does, and that's enough.